Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Ted. I'm here with Yanni, and this is the front office episode of Free Tendies Fantasy. How's it going, man?
Good, man. Bummer of a Monday night. Bummer of a Monday night, but I'm good.
Yeah, bummer of a Monday night, but I mean, it was a great weekend of football at least, right? Like, I just planted on my couch. All I was doing was watching games. So, not too bad.
Well, it was a great weekend to be watching football. I don't know if it was a great weekend of football. Like the scoring seemed weird. A lot of the offenses were kind of garbage, but I was really happy to be watching football.
Well, I mean, if you like low scoring games, gross quarterback play, and low fantasy scores, it wasn't too bad. And unders, too. Big unders weekend. But anyways, let's get to just our recap of the game on that was happened tonight. The Jets and the Bills, and I believe the score was 22-16, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's 22-16 with the last second punt return for the Jets win. I lost my bet like a big dumb clown. I'm convinced that was the right side. I mean, Zach Wilson is Zach Wilson, but Josh Allen tried his best to let the Jets back into the game. But I mean, I think the thing that everybody is kind of paying attention to and has on their mind is obviously the Aaron Rodgers Achilles. Huge bummer. Like I've said before, I'm from Chico. I love Aaron. It's just such a bummer to see such optimism just go down the drain. I think he was 0 for 1 tonight. He didn't even make it through the first drive. It is such a bummer.
he
Um,
did not get 1 yard. He did not get one, which was funny. There was I don't know which company it was doing a promotional bet, zero point 0.5 yards for Aaron Rodgers over under.
oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Some people like busted parlays on that promotional bet.
I wonder if
Yeah.
they refund. Like maybe Underdog refunds that.
I believe DraftKings said they were.
Okay.
I think they said they're refunding Aaron Rodgers, you know, parlays or not parlays, prop bets.
Yeah. Such a bummer, man. Hate to see it. Obviously, there are overarching fantasy implications other than just Rodgers. There's going to be a lot of guys on the offense that are affected by this, but we will get more into that on Thursday in our head coach episode, where we kind of go over the games and all that stuff. But anyways, let's get into the meat of tonight's episode. We got our week one takeaways, and Yanni, I'll let you start it out. I think you were really proud of this take. It was a good one, and I love to see it too. So.
Yeah, man. Kind of like I've been bothering you about all weekend. We have to get something going. There needs to be a change of tone for how Brock Purdy's discussed. There needs to be a change of tone for how Kyle Shanahan's discussed. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand what every single segment on the 49ers begins with. He's not a very good quarterback, but they can win with him. And every single segment begins with Kyle Shanahan doesn't really win championships. He just gets to them. Or he doesn't really win Super Bowls. He just gets to them. 3 of the last 4 years, it's been a run for the 49ers, man. So that's all it really is people need to respect the team more. They are in the running for the best team in football. And if Kansas City doesn't trade for a receiver, if the Eagles don't, I don't know. They looked like they were missing their coordinators a little bit. I wouldn't say it's a bad game. They look like they're missing their coordinators a little bit. And until proven otherwise, the Cowboys cannot beat the 49ers in the postseason. So people need to respect the team more. That was my big takeaway from that game.
Yeah, that's
the next one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was
No,
going
go
to
ahead.
say like that's a bold take saying kind of dunking on the Cowboys there after their performance. I would argue that the Cowboys and the Niners are both the winners of week 1 for sure. I thought it was really funny seeing the 49ers sharp pick everybody was picking the Steelers. That was the sharp pick. Nobody really thought the 49ers had it in the tank, and not only did they go into Pittsburgh and just dog walk the Steelers, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing for Kenny Pickett. It was embarrassing for the
Yeah.
Steelers line. There was injuries everywhere. It wasn't even particularly close. So, I mean, as a
Dude,
as a fan, I love to see it.
there was a point in the game where it was 180 yards to one. And like it was like not an early point in the game. It was like midway through the second quarter or something. It's gotten ridiculous, dude. It's gone way too far. It needs to stop. The 49ers are elite. They're a great team to hammer in bets if they're going to give you 2.5 points against a team like the Steelers. Really proud of that one. The next one I'm not so proud of. The next one I kind of have to eat it on a little bit. I we all like good stories. That's kind of why we're sports. I think that's a huge reason why. The Bears were a great story this year. Is Justin Fields a Jalen Hurts type guy? That's kind of I think what everyone got on this weird vibe. And he's kind of exciting. He played in big college games, and their GM does appear to be a pretty good GM. It seems like they know what they're doing. That defense is not an NFL caliber defense. They have no business being fielded in an NFL game. Um, they're probably a notch or two above Alabama's defense. That caliber. Um, they are not someone my money will be going on, maybe ever again. Uh, just awful, man. They made Jordan Love look like he was Aaron Rodgers. So I'm out. I'm out on them. That was embarrassing.
Well, I mean, you were loyal for 1 week. That's the good news. I mean, for me, I'll kind of bet on the Bears defense, but in the sense that I'm firing up every single fantasy borderline player that I have that's playing that defense. Like, the Bucks get him this week, and I unfortunately have Baker Mayfield in a league. And guess what? He's in there in the old Superflex 14 team league. I'm riding with Baker, and I actually feel pretty good about it. I think Godwin and Evans are both good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they both have solid matchups. I think Rashad White, if he has anything, it will be this game, and we'll see. If Rashad White has a stinker against the Bears, I'm just all the way out on him. If I wasn't already, but yeah, I mean we can take some data from that, right? Like the Bears, and you know what? Even if Justin Fields had a Jalen Hurts type game, even if he was like the best he was last year, like I'm not even sure they win that game with just how many yards they gave up and how just beat up they got, like all across the board. Like Fields didn't have a great game either, I would say, but like man, that was tough. And it wasn't particularly close either.
Just giving up, dude. Every one of his linemen had like 2 to 7 pressures. I think one of his tackles gave up 7 pressures. Was the height of the O line. Ridiculous. The next ones though, and again, ending on it, we're doing like a compliment sandwich here with our takeaways from this week. The Falcons, man, the Falcons. This team's legit, in my opinion. I know that's kind of controversial. I saw that most of the money was on the Saints to win the division, and the Saints defense did look really. I mean, they looked pretty solid this week. Derek Carr, notwithstanding. I think the Falcons are a legitimate team, man. I think we're going to see this as the year goes on. They're probably going to make their way into my bets again this week. Look, adding Jesse Bates and adding Calais Campbell to the defense, that's not some little thing. Those are like elite, maybe generational players, depending on how you want to define. Maybe not generational, but at the minimum, Pro Bowlers, high-end Pro Bowlers. And Jesse was in there, man. 2 sacks two interceptions of Bryce Young, throwing over the middle, not reading the defense while he picked off the young kid. That team is excellent. They have a super solid formula. Top 5 rushing offensive line in football. They have Bijan and Algier. The times of possessions in games are going to get short. I would guess they're going to be one of the teams with the lowest number of plays run against their defense in the NFL. Probably a really nice time of possession because of the rate at which they rush. I think that gives them a really stable formula. You cut guys loose at the quarterback, you let the secondary sit back, you get a little lead, and you just defend it, and you grind out the game. It's a very old school style of football. It's not one you see a lot. Arthur Smith probably is not a great head coach. At least that's how I feel so far. But the roster looks awesome, man. Really well-constructed team, and they're going to be a team I'm on all year.
Yeah, definitely a good start for the Falcons. Arthur Smith, absolutely. Arthur Smith, kind of like, at least I thought he would. I think you probably saw it was coming a little bit too. This is going to be a team that I think does things to win a lot of games. Like they're going to do anything it takes to win, but a lot of times that's at the expense of your premium Falcons guys that you drafted, like Kyle Pitts, like Drake London, who put up the goose this week. I don't know.
Shares?
I have one share of Drake London, and at least for me, he's going to be riding my pine until I see at least something out of him, and that's that's a relatively high investment draft pick too. But like
ADP 23, or ECR had him at 23 at wide receiver this year. ADP of around 45, 50.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's not like the Bengals, which we'll get to in a second, that I see getting better. This one is you need to prove to me that you're going to be able to at least produce at a reasonable fantasy starter level to get me back in the lineup. But I mean, yeah, you're right. I think that either them or the Saints should be the odd-on favorites for that division. The Saints didn't look great this weekend, but I think the Falcons. I think that it's a solid bet. Very public team at this point. But yeah, I mean, we were here first. So yeah. Anyways, we'll get into my part. And I got to eat some crow on this one on our gambling show. I was just so on the Bengals, so on Joe Burrow, never a doubt. And Yanni goes, how worried are you about Joe Burrow's calf and not playing in the offseason at all? And I said, not at all. It's Joey Burrow. He's the top quarterback. I don't doubt him. and he had one of the worst performances of his career. I think probably the worst performance of his career, and one of the worst
Yeah,
performances of the weekend on a weekend with really bad quarterback play. So
yeah,
that's pretty impressive. To me, Burrow and the Bengals, I don't. This is not a giant red flag going up for me in terms of like, oh, Burrow's gonna bust, Chase is gonna bust. But I do think that there is some truth to knocking the rust off, right? You don't play all preseason and you're coming off the calf. I think I underestimated that. So how long will we have to wait to just kind of get all of our Bengals guys that we're heavily invested in on fantasy back up to speed or back up to a respectable output? I'll put it this way: I wouldn't be super confident in them next week against the Ravens, who are a very good defense. But the fact of the matter is, with guys like Chase or Burrow or T. Higgins, even another goose, I think that the draft capital was such that you just have to trot him out there and wait for him. I would expect maybe another one or two slow games from them, and then they should be able to pick it up and be the Bengals that we all know.
yeah.
This next one, I'm really happy about this one. As a Niners fan, if you are a Niners fan out there, we should be very, very happy about this one. And that was the stinker that Seattle put out against the Rams on Sunday. That was one of Yanni's picks. And, I felt kind of smart when I still I still agreed that the Seahawks weren't going to, you know, I didn't agree that the Rams would cover the spread, right? But I didn't expect Geno to get stopped repeatedly on third down by Aaron Donald and 10 part-time baristas. That was crazy. I think that especially with that matchup too, right? That's not a top defense. And my eyes go to a couple things, and one of them is Geno. So if Geno can't be at least what he was last year, like Geno, I would say was like Alex Smith, solid game manager, had some good plays, made some good throws. But if Geno Smith has this issue where he's not going to be able to run the offense efficiently, and they're going to be stalling out against a bottom tier unit, like I think that
Yeah.
all of the Seahawks that you have may be in trouble. I'm not saying just straight to the bench. I'm not saying drop anyone, but I think the expectations on that team until we see something a little bit better from them should definitely be lowered. And I believe they lost both of their tackles, didn't they? Charles Cross left the game with a toe injury. He was carted off. I'm not sure if there's a timetable on that. And I heard it was two tackles. I'm not sure what happened to the other guy. But
They're bringing in Jason Peters this week, so I'm sure a 41-year-old Jason Peters will turn it around for him against Nick Bosa. We'll
well,
see.
at least those they're quaking in their little rain boots up there. At least they have until Thanksgiving to try and figure it out. But
Right,
man, like as a Niners fan, I don't think this weekend could have gone better for us. Seeing Seattle down in the dumps and
right.
just beating up on the Steelers, God, that feels good. And we
Well,
got
yeah, just
yeah,
one quick thing about their fantasy guys. I would say they're peripheral guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, Charbonnet. Those are probably guys you're not starting. Geno Smith, depending on what your roster composition is. I think DK and Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's usage was really good, and I think DK is enough of an alpha that you're rolling him out, and especially where you draft him. But I would say I'd probably bench the other guys for now. I would not be rolling him out there, and if you can't avoid it, I probably wouldn't start Geno either
see,
for a little bit.
I totally agree with that. The only one that's a little bit of a question to me is Lockett. I never draft Lockett. I never have shares
Nope,
of him, so I don't
I've,
ever
ne-
really pay attention to him.
I've never drafted him once.
Um,
No.
I think like he was going this year as like a wide receiver two or flex. Like when you're looking to bench Lockett, if you look to bench Lockett, make sure you have somebody better on your bench. Like don't roll out I don't know, somebody like Cortland Sutton out there instead of Tyler Lockett. Like even that's kind of close. Like I don't know who's like a terrible wide receiver that you just shouldn't. Maybe DJ Moore. I would probably rather start Tyler Lockett than DJ Moore at this point.
We'll get into that in our head coach thing. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. All right, and then the last one I got for us is the Cowboys defense being a legit top three unit. That was one of the most hilarious massacres I've ever seen on Sunday night. That was domination in every phase of the game.
Yeah,
Domination on defense and special teams, especially. I think Dak wasn't asked to do that much, and Pollard did enough, right? All they had to do was score a field goal to win, and they're just like, yeah, we'll score 40. I think that going forward, this Cowboys defense, we have to recognize is a just total monster with Micah Parsons and Marcus Lawrence rushing with Stephon Gilmore and Diggs on the outside. Like that's going to be a team that could just be a very, very tough matchup for you. I don't expect teams like I wouldn't expect a team with the quality of the Giants to come in and just not only be bad but be unwatchable. Like so, I don't know. I guess with the Cowboys, you just have to keep it in mind, and I would definitely keep expectations lower. Like we saw it tonight with the Jets. That's a very, very good defense, and a lot of the Bills guys just had not a great night. Looking at you, Josh Allen. But yeah, that's just something I would keep in mind, and they are here. They're here, and they're here to stay.
Yeah, but rush game and defense. It's won a lot of NFL championships have been won that way. We'll see how the year develops. The Niners on the October 8th. That's a hell of a game.
Yeah.
We'll see how they do. We'll see how they do when they get into tougher teams. That one's hard to tell if it was a horrible game by the Giants or an amazing game by the Cowboys. It's probably a little bit of both. Yeah. But it looked like the Cowboys are legit. They're the third. They kind of round out that top three in the S tier in the NFC for sure.
How worried are you about Saquon and Darren Waller? Like, are you just hitting the alarm button on them, or are you just going to wait and see? What are your thoughts on that?
Waller had a tremendous target share and route, share and all that sort of stuff before the game. Not worried about it at all. Saquon is running back, man. They don't tend to get fed like that when the teams are trailing. I did notice they made a concerted effort to feed Saquon more targets. So, I'd be encouraged about him. But we'll see. Again, so many weird things. I think the theme of this week was there were so many weird offensive outcomes and so many games that didn't look right to me that I'm almost inclined to just say I'm not going to take this week terribly seriously, except for usage. I'll look at usage because that's what the coaching staff is planning to do, and that's kind of what they've drilled all offseason. I think usage is probably pretty indicative of what this team wants to do. So usage, sure, take it seriously. But like the offensive output was so off. I saw so many teams scoring 60 to 70 points this week in half PPR. I saw full PPR teams getting like 70 to 80 points. I think it was just an extremely weird week. I'm kind of inclined to not make any huge judgments about premium guys coming out of it.
Yeah, the defense is definitely won week one. No question about that.
Well, and it's kind of been like an ongoing theme, right? Is that it's way easier. Defense, it's the same schemes you're running really forever. Like from high school, you run a cover 2, a cover 3, a cover 1, a man 2. The defenders, of course, they get up to speed faster. Offense is like rhythm. It's 11 different components that have to lock in together. On defense, too, if you're doing your job, you just sort of have your zone, your man, your rushing lane. Of course, it's easier for D. Of course, they get on the same page sooner. Of course, they do. Yeah, so I'm not making any big judgments about offensive guys or offenses yet, except for the Bears defense. The Bears defense is horrible.
Yeah.
That's horrible. It's the worst thing I've ever seen.
I think that's a good theme of the week, right? Like, there's a lot of fool's gold out there, I think, right now, and a lot of panic. And the key is to just parse through what's real and what isn't. And I think I'm totally on board with you. I'm out on the Bears defense. I think that was real. And we'll get into it a little bit more on the head coach episode, like kind of, our reads on the teams, the state of the teams, and guys that we think will be key performers for that week. But on that note,
just real quick, I saw a trade this week in a league with $1,000 pot. The guy put up Tony Pollard, Higgins, and Cooper Kupp, and he was going to trade him for Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, and Brandon Ayuk. So the guy was going to trade his first 3 draft picks this week, just right off the bat. Get my first 3 draft picks out of there. Don't be that guy. Don't be panicking so much you're selling your top 3 picks for like 3rd and 4th and 5th round guys.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't lose. You can't lose your fantasy league week 1 from stinky performances from your top guys, but you can lose it by trading away your entire team for a bag of chips.
Yeah.
So. Anyways, let's get on to the free agents of the week. Since obviously there have been quite a few injuries and quite a few standout guys that weren't rostered. So we'll get going with Yanni's list.
Yeah, I'll make it really quick for you guys. Brock Purdy. It's really just consistency. If you need a lot of ceiling, he's probably not going to give it to you. But if you need a lot of floor, he will. I had a 3-point game from Joe Burrow this week. I believe Josh Allen ended up with like 11, 12 points this week. Jalen Hurts came out at 13, 14 points this week. You know, even studs have down game. It does seem like for the most part, Brock is really steady. 15 to 17 points, maybe 20. You know, he offers maybe a minimal rushing upside. He's not a sexy guy you want to roll out there, but he's basically free. He's on the waiver a lot. A lot of guys got him 14th, 15th round. I would check your waiver if you're at all nervous about your quarterback. As far as like Geno Smith versus Brock Purdy, which one do I think has a better chance to bust in a game? It's certainly Geno Smith. And you look, the man led the league in QBR for 8 weeks last year. He led the league in QBR this week. So far, he's leading the NFL in QBR in 2023. It's one of the highest scoring offenses in football. He's a great add to your roster. So Kieran Williams' exact figures and the reason you want to add him on your roster. The guy came out there with 17 opportunities, 2 of which were targets. He got 2 touchdowns for a total of 17.4 fantasy points. The significant thing about this one was Cam Akers did not get any run until they were well ahead. So they were putting Kieran in there when the game was close or when they were trailing. So basically any game they're competitive in, I think you can expect high usage on there. He's proud. I wouldn't go crazy. I wouldn't do like 20, 30% of your fab. But if you can get him for 10 or 15% of your fab, add Kieran Williams to your roster. The next one's kind of interesting. I guess he's higher rostered because these rookie tight ends were sort of appealing to people in the preseason. But I don't know if he might be dropped. Check your waiver wire. Jake Ferguson actually had a 29% target share. He had 7 targets and he dropped an easy touchdown. It was raining pretty heavily. In a game where you're blowing them out, where you're not passing a lot, you know, and you're getting 29% of Dak's target share in your first game, that's a great addition at tight end. I think that's someone you would feel really comfortable with rolling forward. I think this is going to kind of be the year of the rookie tight end, and he's certainly going to be part of that. The next one, Roshan Johnson. This one's a little bit different. I'm shocked he's not on more roster. He is actually my most rostered. Him and Breece Hall are my most rostered players this year. And it was because in every draft, if I went defense and kicker around early, I'd get him around 15. If I wanted to get him 13, 14, if I was going to wait, that's when I got him. I love this kid. I think he showed legitimate 3-down back potential. In terms of his archetype, he was playing behind Bijan, so you never know. I shouted him out last week. I'm shouting him out again this week. He had a 20% target share, getting 7 targets this week. He had 35 total yards on 7 targets and a rush touchdown, so 14.5 points. It was a weird game script. He was kind of pressed into service once they started trailing. Maybe they won't grind it out with him. His thing is kind of pass blocking and running routes. But 7 targets for a rookie in his first game at running back, and the fact that he's only 16% rostered on Yahoo, go get him. Go get him.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to pine off Roshan Johnson for a second. I mean, like, I think that a lot of the naysayers for him might say, well, he didn't really get a lot of his touches until garbage time. I would expect the Bears to be in garbage time a lot.
Right.
A lot.
Right.
And if he's going to be, like, playing maybe a whole fourth quarter and getting these, like, easy dump-offs, like, yeah, sign me up. I'm in on that. Especially, like, 16% rostered is just too low.
We're scouring the trash heap here, right, for guys. And
yeah.
This is certainly one that needs to be on your roster.
Yeah. And I would even say, too, this week 1 might be one of the most important weeks for waivers, right? Because this is going to be a week where there's a lot of guys who just straight up should have been drafted that you can get right now. So in terms of, like, if you're playing in a fab league, some of these guys like Purdy, like I would be comfortable, especially if you're like a 1 quarterback roster with Aaron Rodgers, dump your fab. Just dump your fab into any quarterback that you think could be good. If you want to save some, that's fine. But I wouldn't hesitate to make sure that you lock up some of these like key guys before they're gone, and then we're in mid-season and the pickings aren't as nice. But anyways, let's get on to my free agent picks of the week. So the first one is, and forgive me if I say this wrong, Puka Nacua, 6% rostered wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. Puka had, I believe, 15 targets week 1, which was, it led all wide receivers in targets, which is pretty amazing. I think that at least until Cooper Kupp is back, right? So Cooper Kupp's on the IR. The earliest he could be back is week 5. I would expect the Rams and Matthew Stafford to be throwing the ball all over the place. The running game, even against a not very great Seahawks run defense, wasn't great. And Puka was getting Cooper Kupp type usage. Puka was running all different types of routes. Puka was beating Tariq Woolen. I mean, is a short-term like stopgap guy, and like potentially even like if he plays well enough, right? Even when Cooper Kupp is back, like are you going to take him off the field? I absolutely think he's worth a priority waiver ad this week. I don't think if you can get 15 targets on your waivers, like go for it, right? Um, so my next one is Joshua Kelly, running back 2 for the LA Chargers. The game between the Chargers and the Dolphins was a little weird. I believe the Chargers ran like 70 plays or something insane. It's not like your typical. Usually your game is going to be slower and there's going to be less plays. That being said, Joshua Kelly did a full 50-50 carry split with Austin Eckler. I believe he had 19 carries. He ran effectively. He ran well. He was the clear backup behind Eckler. So if you are an Eckler owner, this is a must grab. This is a must grab just in case Austin goes down. Then you have an easy plug and play. And I think he'll have standalone value too, especially. I wouldn't expect the carries to be 50-50 going forward, but he's definitely going to have a role in this offense. And especially, it's hard to find good running backs out there, right? Like a lot of times these running backs that are on waivers really is picking out of the trash can, like Yanni mentioned before. But I think this is a good one. He should probably be rostered in something like 80% of leagues, I would say.
Well, and not just, you're not looking at standalone value. They're evaluating Eckler's ankle right now. They think he may miss this week. They said they're not going to have an update until Wednesday, but the tone did not sound good. The verbiage Brandon Staley used was not good. So Joshua Kelly looked like the clear number 2 behind him, and I think you could slot him into like a low-end RB1 if Eckler misses. We've kind of been wondering when all this usage is going to catch up to Eckler, and for week 1 to hear that he's coming up lame from the game. It's interesting. Adam.
Yep.
I don't know what percentage of fab. I mean, probably the Eckler owner is going to throw 15%, 20% of his fab on there. So, bid accordingly, whatever you're comfortable with. But certainly take a look at him.
Yeah,
certainly.
Absolutely. He's like Alexander Madison, like in terms of like that elite plug and play, like or not elite, but like a solid RB1 when the primary guy's out. But he also gets carries like just normally too. Like so he's like Madison on steroids. Anyways, yeah, let's get to the next one. Talking about running backs, it's Gus Edwards. He is 20% rostered, and obviously J.K. Dobbins had the Achilles this week. He is out for the season. That is just another dagger. I don't know. Do you think J.K. is like probably done? Like that's like a career ender, like to me. Like coming off the coming off the holdout. This was kind of like his prove it year. He was finally getting featured, and then Achilles. Like he's probably gonna have to make a veteran minimum now, go somewhere to some team that's gonna have to try and rehab him and like get him better. It's tough for him. So T's and P's. That being said, somebody's got to do it, right? Somebody has got to do it in Baltimore. Justice Hill is in the mix. I believe Justice Hill had 2 touchdown runs last on Sunday, and Gus Edwards is the veteran. He's been there for a while. I figure I don't see Gus being a featured back, but I see him being a piece of the Ravens' backfield, which should be solid. I mean, we've seen the Ravens in their gross backfield splits before, but that was with Greg Roman too. Important to keep in mind. So maybe either Gus or Justice Hill will kind of get the not featured back, but the primary role. And my bet would be on Gus just because he's been there longer. And when he's had opportunities, he's looked solid. Like he's not Bijan, but he gets it done as much as he probably needs to. And my last one is Durham Smythe, tight end for the Dolphins. And I ran these numbers on Yahoo, and it said 0% rostered. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 teams out there that have him, but for now we're putting 0 on the slide. So this was an interesting game, like I was mentioning with Joshua Kelly, where it was a just offensive barn burner, and there were tons of plays being ran. So I think that you got to take these results with a grain of salt. But he had 7 or 8 targets as a tight end on the Dolphins, which is great. That's a piece of an excellent offense, and it's also important to note that in the game on Sunday, Tua had a wider distribution of targets than he typically does. So I believe Tyreek, even with his monster game, was still in the 30s for his target share, which is, I mean, I don't want to say par for the course when he puts up 202 touchdowns, but in terms of like getting the ball thrown his way, it was par for the course. But Jalen Waddle, he only had, I believe, 11% target share, and last year I believe he was in the mid to high 20s for target share, and those targets that typically go to Jalen went to a lot of other guys, Durham being one of them. So if Durham is gonna be like a key part of this offense who's actually getting some targets, like sign me up. The tight end position is a wasteland. Like if you don't have Kelsey, Mark Andrews, T.J. Hawkinson, or maybe Waller, like man, like there's a good chance that you're probably looking for a tight end. I think that hitching your wagon to somebody who's on a solid offense in a like plus matchup, like if the Dolphins are playing someone like the Texans, for example, right? I'd probably fire him up, and you know. I wouldn't recommend rostering 2 tight ends, but if you took a shot on tight end like near the end of your draft and you want to go in a different direction and it's like a low cost to just switch out your tight ends, I'd go for it. I don't see why not. Anybody who scores like 5 points is a solid tight end in my mind. Like, geez, that's just the state of the position at this point.
Yep.
All right, then this is our drop list. These are guys that have been rostered or largely rostered that we feel okay with you dropping. First one on the list is Christian Kirk. I don't think Yanni liked this one, but I'm all the way out on Christian Kirk. One of the things that I saw in week 1 that I think is for real is the Calvin Ridley usage. He was a alpha wide receiver 1 coming off the couch, which is I didn't see that coming. I didn't draft him anywhere. I wish I had. I think he was going like the 3rd round or something, and I was like, oh, that's too rich. He might not be able to play. It's the same stuff I said about Deshaun and Le'Veon Bell, and Michael Thomas, and man, Ridley was the outlier there. If you drafted him, congratulations, you won. But at the cost of Ridley being a great alpha 1, it feels like Christian Kirk has been. I don't want to say phased out of the offense, but he's definitely not getting targets. I believe he ran a route in 60% of plays that Trevor Lawrence is dropping back, which is not ideal. Zay Jones is emerging.
He wasn't. Sorry to interrupt you. He was not on the field for 2 wide receiver sets a lot.
Yeah,
that's alarming. That was shocking to me.
It's definitely not what you drafted. That's for sure.
No. Again, I wouldn't drop him, but is it alarming? Is it absolutely? Absolutely.
If you have a deep bench, and you have better options to drop, but I try and keep him, I guess. But for if you got a pretty solid deep bench, or you're just playing in a league with a smaller bench, that's why we put him on the list, because it's I would say that the usage is not going to be what we thought it was. That's for sure. The next one is Kadarius Toney. Do we even need to say anything much about this? That was one of the worst wide receiver performances I've ever seen. Man, he lost the game for the Chiefs single-handedly. That's hard to do when you're not like a quarterback or something, right?
Yep.
It's impressive. But yeah, get him off your roster. If anything else, I just don't want him next to the winners on my team. The next one is Adam Thielen. He's old. He's on a bad offense, and he's not getting any better. I don't want any piece of the Panthers' offense, and I think that, I don't know, maybe he got drafted because of name value, but it feels like it's over for him.
Even then, man, I'm kind of sad about my Sanders share. I have one of them, and I kind of regret it. Does not look like that's going to be. Bryce Young's going to have a very rough season if he acclimates to the NFL at all. But at least the early going, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. With Sanders, I would say that he's probably the one who is least affected by this, right. Just because they're going to have no other choice but to use him, right? Maybe expect some dump offs or something, but yeah, Thielen doesn't need to be rostered at this point. Yeah, you could probably find somebody better.
Yeah,
But
Gerald Everett was pretty straightforward. It just looked like Parham's their number one,
yep,
didn't it? And I mean, and it looked like not just that. I mean, Parham looked pretty good. Like looked
yeah.
like he had a really good feel for where Herbert was looking, and for the end zone, for the red zone, the guy's like an NBA center size guy. He's massive. You know, that's straightforward.
Yep. Tight end 2 on a team that doesn't throw to the tight end a bunch is a tough sell. You have better options, I believe. Like,
And the last two are super uninteresting and super straightforward. If you
yeah.
pull out you're probably not going to be very useful in fantasy.
Yeah.
Got to drop them.
Well, I mean, we're still waiting on the report from Aaron, but it just seems like it is very. If he's doing an MRI on Monday, and probably they're just going to come out. They're probably going to come out tomorrow and just say he's out for the season. So if you feel like waiting, you can do that. But I'd say just drop him. It's not looking good. Then last but not least, we have our buy sell targets. Earlier we told you that to not panic and just bargain sale your whole roster for a bag of chips. But if you have somebody in your league that is going to do that, you might as well, right? Might as well. So I'll let you take the first one because this is one of yours.
Yeah, man, my boy. I love this guy coming into the league this year. Ted kind of talked me out, and rightfully so, kind of talked me out of taking him at ADP, and I wasn't comfortable at ADP. You know, he was going in like Yahoo around 35, most drafts, maybe 30, a lot of drafts. And that's Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is awesome. His talent is ridiculous. I think it's only going to get better throughout the year, but one of the reasons to be wary of him at ADP, they work rookie running backs in. Even Bijan didn't just get workhorsed, and especially rookie running backs and offenses with competent veterans there. And Gibbs is there with Montgomery. They paid him $6 million a season. They love mashing the football in between the tackles. Montgomery's actually extremely high rated in between the tackles. So we kind of expected this early on. I think talent generally always wins, and I think when you have the average per carry and the average broken tackles that Jahmyr Gibbs had, I think he's only going to get more usage. I think I saw a lot of panic, man. A lot of panic, whether it was the Yahoo chat, whether it's fantasy discords, whether it's Reddit, about this guy tanking their season. People are saying it was a total busted pick. I think that's, is it a busted pick if you were drafting him to be the 10th or 11th running back right away? Then yeah, I guess in that sense it's a busted pick. But by no means is this going to be his usage for the rest of the year. I'm extremely confident he's going to get a lot more run as the year goes on. Also, this game script was kind of weird, right? It was like they were playing keep away from Mahomes. It was not high score. They weren't airing the ball out. It seemed like they were pretty content to just rush it 3 to 6 times and punt when they needed to. I don't think that's a regular game script going forward. I'm totally comfortable buying Jahmyr Gibbs.
Absolute difference maker every time he touched the ball. Absolute. Yeah, you could see it. You could see how fast he was. To me, Gibbs has total ETN vibes from last year, where when James Robinson was in town, like ETN looked better, but he just wasn't getting the work. And once he got the work, he just took off. So yeah, I would buy Gibbs. I wouldn't expect his usage to go through the roof. I wouldn't expect him to be workhorse unless something happened to Monty, in which case watch out. I think that talent could just take, if they see a full workload of Jahmyr Gibbs and they see what he's doing, I think that he'll just take that job and there's no looking back like at that point. So yeah, if you can send it an offer that somebody's willing to take for Gibbs, like go for it. Absolutely. The next
like,
one.
Say you could trade like an Alexander Madison. If someone's really panicked, right?
Yeah.
You can do Madison for Gibbs. Do that.
Yeah.
Just for sure do that. If, I don't know, something like that. He's got a crazy ceiling.
If Rashad White goes off this week against the Bears, if Rashad White has a good game, Jahmyr Gibbs has another low carry game, sell Rashad. Do it. Yeah. All right, the next one is my champion, Saquon Barkley. He had a rough go of it, as did the rest of the Giants on Sunday night. I don't think that anybody is super panicking on him yet. But if somebody is willing to listen and 7 points wasn't enough for him week 1, maybe it's a team that went 0-1, had another injury somewhere where maybe they could use some additional depth, I would try and bring Saquon if you can.
Yep.
To me, I love him. I think he's going to be the running back 1 for this year. Right now, I'm eating some crow, not taking CMC in my draft. But you know what? The diamond hands, let's go buy in on Saquon. I guess important to note too, they got the Cowboys one more time, and they got the Eagles twice. So it's not the easiest schedule in the world. They have the 49ers as well in week 3, I
Yeah,
believe. So there's a couple
yeah.
tough matchups, but I think if Dimes doesn't look so terrible, I would expect Saquon and Waller to keep being the only pieces that keep that offense moving. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I would just say buy responsibly on that. Make sure you're not. I mean, if you can get them at a good enough rate, man, that might be a league winner down the stretch.
yeah.
The the next one's a point of contention between the two of us, but I think there's some pretty clear arguments. We've gone back and forth for months now about who the Niners wide receiver, and really this started all the way back last season when Debo was creating discord with the 49ers about whether he was going to be traded, whether he wasn't. There was an interesting opportunity to get the 10th overall pick. The Jets wouldn't give it up. The Niners were kind of putting Debo on the table. And then coming into the season, you had Ayuk outscore Debo by 2.5 fantasy points per game. He beat him in number of games played in every single statistical category. Personally, I'm of the opinion that Ayuk is their wide receiver one. I'm actually of the opinion that CMC, Ayuk, and Kittle are their top 3. I would argue that he is the number 4 option in their offense. I know that's a ridiculous thing to say. That's how I feel. I would not touch him at ADP. This guy is a guy that for most of his fantasy career has actually been like a middling wide receiver 2, back end wide receiver 2. He had one spike year. I think that's kept him going for now 2 seasons. I think he has enough name value, and the offense is probably looking up enough that you can get something pretty good for him. Or you can use him as a centerpiece in a trade. Maybe you can't because of his bad week. I do not think you're getting the 49ers wide receiver one. I think you're holding on to name value in a good season 2 years ago. I would move him if possible.
I mean, what I will say is your argument got more compelling after week 1. That's for sure. Ayuk looked fantastic. Him and CMC were the players of the game on Monday, absolutely. And yeah, so I think that I think discourse is pretty high on Ayuk right now. Everybody is really excited about having him if they drafted him. What I would say about Debo, last year, obviously with the contract holdout, right? He came into camp a little out of shape. He wasn't ready to go, and then there was the ankle that he had, or it was a knee against the Buccaneers last year.
Got banged up.
Yep.
He certainly got banged up.
Yep. Have to keep in mind the first 2 games of the season were Trey Lance and a monsoon. Then there was 1 quarter of Trey Lance. He broke his ankle. Now he has a metal ankle. And then we had Jimmy, who had just gotten a playbook a week ago, throwing the ball. So Ayuk still did a little bit better than Debo in that time. That's for sure. So we have about a 8 to 9 week sample size of last year with out of shape Debo and bad Jimmy. We had the playoffs, which Debo dominated target share. He dominated yards. He dominated everything. And then we have 1 game of this season. So to me, I'm not all the way out on Debo yet. And obviously, Debo gets carries too, right? It's Debo could just get a carry inside the 5-yard line very, very easily. So
they did
yeah.
try to work him in. It looked like there was a deliberate effort to get him like manufactured touches in the game.
Yeah.
So I mean, certainly, 3 rushes this year. So say he gets 50, 60 rush attempts over the year. That definitely can increase his upside. I mean, there's no doubt.
Yeah. And I think if people are feeling like you do, right, with just this is Ayuk's team now, Ayuk is the one. I think this would be a good time if you don't believe that to buy Debo, right? Like maybe you have a manager who saw week 1 and heard the preseason reports and is kind of convinced that Debo is not the primary guy in San Francisco anymore. Then I would look to that manager and maybe buy him because maybe they're undervaluing him. That's a tough one, and he's definitely polarizing, that's for sure. And I think that everybody has a different opinion about him. But yeah, we threw him in there. I think it's a good conversation piece for sure.
Would you rather have Debo Samuel or Nico Collins for the rest of the season?
Nico Collins, obviously. That
All
11 targets week 1.
We'll bookmark that.
Yeah.
We will come back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next one, Michael Pittman. Had a rebound game week 1. I was very happy about it because me and Yanni have a little side bet. It is whoever scores the most fantasy points between Michael Pittman and Godwin. There's a a dollar amount on it, and I'm feeling pretty good right now. Pittman
Some
had,
items,
yeah,
some items that some adults buy, some kids buy them too. It's not
yeah.
important what the are. They're, but there's items up for grabs
All I know is
momentarily.
that I'm winning, and I'm feeling great about
You are
Michael
winning.
Pittman right now. I mean, here's the thing though. I don't know. I don't know how sticky it's going to be, right? Richardson came out and looked great week one. A lot of his throws were shorter, depth of target stuff. And Michael Pittman's long touchdown was a screen pass that just got broken and they blocked for him. Um,
Yeah.
I believe he had like a 19-point fantasy game in a down week. So definitely one of the top scorers of this week. I think
Yeah.
that depending on what people will offer for him, right? Like what you can get for him. I think he's a piece that I wouldn't mind shopping. And it depends on the return too, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. And for the record, I think that Richardson looked great. I think Richardson looked much better than I thought he was going to week one against a
Yeah.
Jags defense that everybody took pretty seriously. That's
Right.
not the Bears. He wasn't playing the Bears, and he kept him in the game. They almost won the game too. So I don't know. Uh, Pittman, I love him. Keep going, buddy. Beat it, Godwin at least. But yeah, I'm fine with selling him.
Let's say there's someone that's maximally panicking. Let's say a Higgins owner is absolutely
Oh,
freaking. If you could trade up from Pittman to Higgins,
mm-hmm.
you're going from Richardson to Joe Burrow, you're going from probably 25 passes a game to like 35, 40 some games. I would probably pull the trigger on something like that. And again, maybe they don't do a 1-for-1, maybe you throw in a bench, but you balance it out somehow. But like if you can slide up that many tiers like that, just based off one game, which I saw some guys do last year. I saw some guys do. Some people dumped CD extremely cheap last year, like Gabe Davis. I might have been one of them. I don't know. People did it. It happens. Um, Take a look around, see what people are thinking. A lot of big wide receivers did not have big weeks. I would imagine Devontae owners are not very comfortable right now. I'm one of them. I have him in a league. I'm not exactly thrilled with the usage. So take a look, see what you can get.
And then last but not least, we have just Bucks wide receivers because I think that this applies to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So the Bucks wide receivers actually had a decent week one. It was better than we thought. In a win over the Vikings, Baker looked better than we thought. Baker came out and had a respectable day. He didn't throw for 300 yards or anything. He didn't light the world on fire, but you know what? He did enough. Mike Evans got home on a 30-yard touchdown. Godwin was getting peppered with targets. It is kind of, I don't want to say what we thought because one of us might have thought that Baker was going to stink and the Bucks would stink, but they looked pretty solid. Um, the issue I have with this and why we put them on this list is the Vikings defense isn't great. Definitely not great by any means. And I think that a more competent defense, like even though not even just a more competent defense, like the ones in their division, like I could see the Falcons defense and the Panthers defense and definitely the Saints defense just eating Baker for breakfast for sure. Like I think that if you can, I would wait until next week. This is why we have question marks there because they have the Bears next week, our favorite fantasy defense to face, at least after 1 week of overreactions. So I think I wouldn't be surprised to see Baker and the Bucks wide receivers put up some solid numbers in week two. And at that
Wild,
point, then I would turn around and try and flip them.
wild numbers, dude. I think you could project, you might get like mid-range wide receiver 2 weeks out of Godwin and Evans.
Over under 3 passing touchdowns for Baker week two.
Well, over would be a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
over and under 2.5 touchdowns, I'll go over.
yeah.
I wouldn't take the over on 3 probably.
I'm putting on the record 4 passing touchdowns for Baker Mayfield next week. I'm in. I'm in.
Dude, that's what you're talking about with the Bears. That's the whole thing. And you have to think about what those numbers are going to look like when you go to trade one of these guys. You might have Mike Evans with like a nice 10 and 18 right there, right to start the season.
No.
You have a ton of leverage all of a sudden. Now it's hard to get rid of when you have a mid-round pick that hits like that. It's really hard to get rid of them. Maybe you decide maybe they're guys that you want to try to buy right now before they go off. That's kind of up to you how risk averse you are or not. certainly it's at the bare minimum a question mark to what degree Baker's going to keep up their production as the year goes on. And Goodwin, if it wasn't PPR, it's hard to say he had like a monster game. He did have a promising game. They're kind of what you wanted to see. Slot targets, move the chains guy. They had a really low passing volume in that game for some reason. I was kind of surprised about that. But just something to monitor. These are two guys that I would keep an eye on. Maybe Godwin's a buy low. Maybe, if you can get him at the right price.
Yeah.
But we'll see what they look like at the end of next week.
And the one thing that I definitely think we have to mention specifically for Mike Evans owners is if he gets moved, like you're gonna want to have him, right? Like Mike Evans to the Chiefs. If that happens, you might have just got a league winner right there.
You might have 22 points a game out of him if he goes to the Chiefs.
Yeah,
like 18, 22 a game.
Yeah. So
he would get 15 targets a game if he went there. 10 at the floor, 15 at the max, and it would be regular.
Yeah,
be insane.
So for me, on these guys specifically, I would be a little more keen to sell Godwin and a little bit more patient with Evans just for that upside. But yeah, the Bucks long-term fantasy value, I just don't see it this year. But it's been a nice run so far, and I'm not off them next week, that's for sure. Anyways, that's gonna do it for us in the front office episode. So please subscribe, let us know what you thought, and if you could trick any of your league mates into making a bad trade. But that's going to do it for us. So see you guys.
Yeah, thanks for watching.